Hello, Colerain. My name is Jeff Mills. I'm the Township Administrator here, and we're here today to talk about a really exciting initiative called the Team Up to Greenup initiative. It's a project that brings together our township government with neighborhood organizations, our chamber, our business community, and also third-party organizations like Green Umbrella, who are committed to making our whole region more green. This session that you're about to see was actually recorded for an American Planning Association conference, but we really wanted to make sure that the community understood what this Team Up to Greenup initiative is also. So we wanted to make it available for you too. So if it seems like a little conference-y, now you know why. It's because it's supposed to be. But hopefully you get to learn something about what's going on in Colerain Township, and we'd love to have your support and your involvement in making Colerain cleaner and greener. Hello, Ohio planners. My name is Jeff Mills. I'm the Township Administrator for a community just outside of Cincinnati called Colerain Township. Colerain Township is a first-ring suburb. We have about 60,000 folks that live here. We're about 42 square miles. It's a beautiful day here, and we're excited to join you at the planning conference this year. Really excited to share with you a project that we've been working on here in Colerain called the Team Up to Greenup initiative. Why we think that you might be interested in it also is because it's this wonderful, in my opinion, example of great planning leading to real tangible outcomes, transformational change in our community. And we believe that the alignment and coalition that was built for this initiative could be replicated in other places, and we just sort of wanted to share with you how this whole thing came to be, what it is, and hopefully it helps make a difference in your community too. I'm a planner by trade, and I'm the only, I think I'm the only planner on the board here today, but I'll try to keep it in a plannerly context and sort of walk us through as the moderator of the panel. Now I'd like to introduce our panel today. We have Savannah Sullivan. Savannah is with an organization called Green Umbrella, and she'll tell you a little bit more about Green Umbrella here in a minute. We have Dean Farrier. Dean is with Rumpke Waste and Recycling. He's also a member of our Colerain Township Chamber of Commerce. And we have Laurie Mcmullen, who is a leader in one of our community groups called A Greater Northbrook, and they have a parent organization, if you will, that she'll tell you a little bit more about too. So without further ado, maybe we can start with more detailed introductions. Savannah?
I'm Savannah Sullivan. I'm the Climate Policy Lead at Green Umbrella, which is the Regional Sustainability Alliance. We work in Southwest Ohio, Northern Kentucky, and Southeast Indiana. And what the climate policy work is dedicated to is working with local governments across the region to kickstart and accelerate their climate planning goals and implementation strategies. And so we've had the pleasure of working with Colerain Township as one of our first jurisdictions that we've been collaborating with in our new work since we just launched this year.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate it. And thanks for your work in collaboration with us. Next, we have Dean Farrier with Rumpke Recycling and Solid Waste. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Waste and Recycling, yes.
So Dean Farrier with Rumpke. We are probably, I think, the largest employer in Colerain Township. We also have a landfill here in the township. So Rumpke is in our 90th year coming up next year. Privately owned, fourth generation leadership roles. Rumpke, from day one when I've been at the company, has always been a huge community partner. Just the culture we've created and giving back to the community itself. Employees live in the township, work in the township with us. So my role at Rumpke is kind of the municipality public sector rep. So I do engage with a lot of Chamber of Commerce's, a lot of government involvement. So been here about 11 years at Rumpke.
Very good. Thanks, Dean. And last but not least, we have Laurie Mcmullen with A Greater Northbrook. Thanks for coming, Laurie.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for having me. I'm Laurie Mcmullen. I represent a community group called Community by Design, a local nonprofit, as well as a volunteer group called A Greater Northbrook. Our part of A Greater Northbrook is what I'm mainly representing today, which is a neighborhood revitalization group We try to get neighbors to come out of their houses and learn about each other, take care of each other, become friends with each other, because friends look out for one another and make a safe community, but also try to improve our neighborhood with things such as placemaking and team up to Greenup and planting street trees and so forth.
That's right.
But I appreciate the offer to be here today.
Yeah. Well, we're so glad that you're here, Laurie, Dean, and Savannah. Thanks for taking time. We were going to be joined by one more. That was going to be Dave Moravec. He's the president of our Chamber of Commerce, but he went and got married and is currently on his honeymoon. So he will not be joining us today. But I did want to just share with the group that the Colerain Chamber of Commerce is a really critical partner here in the Team Up to Greenup initiative, and give you just a little bit of background on what exactly Team Up to Greenup is. So each year in Colerain Township, we organize our work through something called our strategic plan and budget. And what we endeavor to do with that strategic plan is to reach out to our elected officials in townships in Ohio, it's trustees, but also to our residents, to our business community, to our neighborhood organizations, and find out what the priorities are for the coming year. So with our trustees, we ask them, what are the big themes to the next year? What would you say would make us successful if we accomplished, or put resources towards certain ideas? So this year, in 2021, the big theme is clean, green, and prosperous. From there, we have a series of town halls where we reach out to our residents and businesses and all stakeholders and say, hey, clean, green, and prosperous, what are some things that we can do to make our community cleaner, greener, and more prosperous? And then we build out initiatives underneath those goals. So big theme, goals, and initiatives should be somewhat familiar to us planners, right? Then what's I think is kind of interesting and maybe a little bit unique is we then take our budget and put resources towards those things, and together we have a document that's called our strategic plan and budget each year. So what's really interesting about this year in particular in Colerain Township is that all of a sudden we started to see some alignment behind some of these big themes, these goals, and these initiatives. And in fact, our chamber, Dave Moravec and our chamber said, our business community is also interested in clean and green and prosperous. What can we do together to make this happen? And so he reached out to Dean Farrier to lead a group, a sort of a focus group or a committee or whatever you want to call it, an action-oriented group of people to bring ideas together on what the business community could help the township do. And we're very appreciative of the work of the chamber and leading that. That's sort of on the business side. Then on the residential side, through our public services department, Jackie O'Connell is leading a sort of neighborhood set of initiatives where they're doing sort of parallel processes, but it's on the residential side as opposed to the business side. So we've got this great alignment of our neighborhoods, our businesses, and together we're trying to make something great happen. But it didn't just start with the strategic plan, and I think I'd like to start on the panel going back to Laurie. Laurie, in Northbrook, we've had a history, right? I mean, yes. It's been our relationship probably didn't start on the most positive foot with the neighborhood in the township. Do you want to talk a little bit about early days, where we've come from, how we got over a bunch of hurdles, and then how that sort of culminated in the Northbrook Now plan and what that is?
Yes, you are correct. We started off on very opposite sides and a lot of finger pointing towards both sides. In essence, my neighborhood, Northbrook, started going through a recession. It started in 2008, and by 2017, we had a lot of crime, a lot of vandalism, thefts, tire slashing, which is what got me involved with 2 cars being slashed. Reached out to the township saying, what the heck are you guys going to do to help us stop where we're at? We need to reassess what's happening and find a plan. We learned very quickly that there are things that the township could have been doing for us, such as policing, stronger policing, and just support, but also things that us as residents needed to do for ourselves, and then the combined. And it is the combined task is kind of what has led us here to today. So back in 2018, so a year after the creation of a Greater Northbrook, we were able to work with Kathleen from Urban Fast Forward and created a Northbrook strategic reinvestment plan. And that plan is a playbook. It's about 90 pages, and it talks about the past, present, and future of Northbrook. And it has short-term goals. A lot of them we've already checked off the list.
That's right.
Goals, say 5 years from now, goals 10 years from now, which are a lot harder. But the 5-year goals, we're on a good track because that included things such as street trees, which is where we are at today. Super exciting.
Yeah.
But yes, so we have this plan. It's our playbook. We follow it. When we find a problem, we can flip through this, figure out if it's something that we've already come up with a plan for. If not, we can either start problem solving ourselves or reach out with the great relationship that we've built with being able to problem solve where we're at.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks. And we'll come back and we'll dig in. I want to dig into some of those a little bit more, but that's a great start.
Yeah.
Dean, I'd love to hear more about, from your perspective, why should the business community care about litter, cleaning up and greening the community? Why does the business community care?
I mentioned earlier that from the first day I stepped into Rumpke, always a family-operated, community-engaging company.
Yeah.
And we probably follow suit with a lot of major companies in town. I go back to the ownership of the Reds. He was not part of the Reds. He bought the Reds, but just community involvement to give back. So Rumpke being a waste and recycling industry, a lot of our employees and staff live in the township.
Yeah.
So to be involved in the township to me is a no-brainer, and we should always be involved with the township.
Yeah.
Again, back to engaging the community. Most people don't know Rumpke constantly is donating time, resources, sponsorships, cleanups, Northbrook cleanup events. Right. Rumpke's always under the radar, always under the radar. Don't want any,
right.
A lot of recognition. So I think Rumpke, we're a leader in Colerain. I think we are a leader in the whole region.
Yeah.
Almost every house in this entire region and commercial business depends on us. So we've got 4,000 employees now. Giving back is a priority, always has been. That's all I've ever known since I've been there.
Right.
So we've been involved in a lot of chambers over the years, and I think Colerain Chamber is now 7th or 8th year.
Yeah.
Sound right?
Yeah.
So we were one of the founding board members, contributors to the chamber, and I've just taken more of a step myself recently. Dave and I met back probably last year in 2020, and he kind of spun this idea about a group. Then he came to me real late, probably February, and said, "Hey, you want to just facilitate the group?" Awesome, I'm on it, Dave. Let's go.
Yeah.
So I think our first meeting was in March.
Yeah.
Took us some time to get going.
Right.
A lot of dialogue every month on what are we going to do. We're all kind of volunteers, just here to make a difference. So we've come a long way since March, April, May. We finally stepped into some roles that we're doing and keep doing it. I'm very proud of what we created. I'm born and raised in Colerain.
Yeah.
My first house was a couple blocks over this way, right through the park. So, yeah, very proud of what we've done so far.
Good. And I want to get back to you on sort of more detail on how that group evolved, came together, who the membership is, and talk a little bit more about coming to consensus on what our top priorities were for Team Up to Greenup. Yeah. Savannah. So
Yes.
for those that aren't down here in Greater Cincinnati, Green Umbrella is a regional sustainability organization, and you support businesses, you support communities, you support individuals that are interested in making a difference down here. Your offices are not in Colerain Township. So tell us a little bit more about, if you're in a different community in Euclid, Ohio, somewhere away from here, what is the role of that third party in supporting an initiative like this? What value do you bring to organizations and initiatives?
Absolutely. So Green Umbrella, we pride ourselves on really working with communities and leaders that are sort of like Dean, born and raised in their communities and working on their vision, and so we work with them to kind of further catalyze and grow their efforts and initiatives. And that can be a tremendous role of third-party group like Green Umbrella, where we can bring in additional resources, additional collaboration opportunities. To use the example of Up to Greenup, Colerain, Green Umbrella, we've been working for decades in the region, specifically on green, sustainable climate equity initiatives. And so we have a lot of cross-sector connections, whether it be with our regional planning organization, with businesses, with nonprofits, and with other volunteers who are doing similar work in their own communities. And so this provides the benefit of a connector that can help elevate, lessons learned, so you don't have to recreate the wheel when you're doing the work in your own community. We can provide resources and connections such as, I know that you all are working now with a local architecture firm that Green Umbrella had connections with from an environmental justice symposium that we were a part of, and they're now helping Team Up to Greenup with some of the design elements of your street tree initiatives. And so these types of connections I think can be really crucial for just help bringing capacity and clarity to initiatives where I know when I work with local governments, everybody's often at max capacity. And so to have additional folks kind of lend a hand, I know can be a real game changer. Similarly, a lot of these issues that we're working on when we think about sustainability and climate action and equity they're regional in scope. Local jurisdictions can achieve a certain amount of work within their boundaries, but a lot of these issues, they don't understand political boundaries. And so how can we all work together and build regional alignment? That is a key goal of Green Umbrella, and it's exciting to see that there are communities all around our region talking about similar things that Colerain's working on. And I definitely encourage folks, if it's Euclid, Ohio, or anywhere across the state, to connect with local groups like Greater Northbrook, their Green Umbrellas, their local companies, because when those ideas are sort of held on tightly by community members, they're much more likely to see a successful fruition. You don't want to storm into a community with new ideas. You want to more so embrace and elevate what they're already excited about.
Yeah, without a doubt. One of the things that resonated with me from what you just said was that capacity building element. I know in our organization, we don't have somebody that can just be dedicated to green initiatives, right? And so, that person that brings the expertise, that brings the ability to, and energy, Dean, you'll probably agree with me on this, when we have our meetings together, we have some folks that are not from Colerain, national organizations, Chamber of Commerce for Sustainability or something like that is part of these organizations. They just infuse an energy that is really helpful. And it also brings, I think, a perspective that is not, it's not local, right? So we're all down in the weeds here, and boy, there's ideas from other communities and other places that are working that could maybe work here. And so that creativity and those extra ideas are really appreciated. That's one of the things that I really appreciate about your involvement. So Dean, Dave came and sat and said, hey, I've got this idea. We want to do something green. We want to do this, help out the township, get to their goals. So from that point, how did you guys go about recruiting businesses to the Team Up to Greenup initiative that's sponsored by the Chamber? So how did you go about recruiting them? Who is currently involved? What kinds of businesses are currently involved? And then if you could talk a little bit about how we ended up with the 3 focus areas.
Okay, so I could take all the credit for the group, but Dave, again, who's not here, he recruited our first 30 people into the group and just asked me to lead and facilitate the first meeting, the second meeting. So we've got, Savannah from Green Umbrella, and what Savannah just said is, I've known Green Umbrella being around Rumpke for 10, 11 years now, but never kind of understood what they did, but what her expertise and what she brought to the table was a total different perspective than I think they were all about. So, we've got Hamilton County Recycling and Solid Waste District. We talked very early about, litter prevention is a big thing for us, but cleanliness, cleaning up around your property, and then recycling initiatives, either it be recycling itself or planting trees. And then you mentioned the national, Jessica's on
Yes.
maternity leave.
Right.
She had a ton of energy.
Yep.
I thought maybe in the beginning a little annoying to me.
Because there was so much energy.
She
It
was so
like,
much, but then
stop.
as soon as she's on maternity leave, and as soon as she left, I missed the heck out of her. She
Yes.
brought a lot of energy. So she's with Chamber Alliance.
Chambers for Innovation and Clean Energy, I believe.
Yeah, and she's from New England.
Right.
And brought this massive national perspective on. She's usually with the utilities side of it and
Right.
Energy Alliance. So here we are with clean and green and litter pickup.
Yep.
And so she brought this huge commitment.
And she also brought the graphic design capabilities that,
Yes,
that we didn't
absolutely.
necessarily have
Yeah.
locally.
So we're all, I'm a volunteer.
Right.
I'm doing this to give back.
We all have day jobs.
I have a day job at Rumpke. I'm at a point in my life where my kids are grown and gone. I wanted to give back, and
Yeah.
it was a no-brainer to me to get involved. So I think Laurie missed maybe the first few meetings, if I remember, but the Northbrook community, we've
Yeah.
had the Grossbeck community in some of our calls. Forgetting a lot of people. We've got Junk King. He's been
Right.
out there. He's been in almost all of our calls.
Yeah.
He's not in Colerain, but
Right.
he's huge on environmentalist. He wants to. Anything he picks up, he wants to donate and recycle
Right.
or donate somewhere. So
La Rosa's a local
Rose
pizzeria.
has been on the link. Yeah. Rob's been on all of our calls.
Right.
Laurie's mentioned Northbrook many a time. So Vinebrook Homes is a big chamber community supporter. They've been to a lot of our meetings.
Right.
They own hundreds of rental houses in the Colerain area. So again,
Yep.
giving back. It was
right.
a no-brainer for me when Dave asked.
Right.
Yeah.
So now we've got this big group of people, and probably everybody had an idea that we want to do something good here, right? But what is it that we do, and how many meetings do we spend just like kicking around like,
So we,
what is it that we're gonna do?
We were virtual,
Right.
So if anybody knows me, they could probably see the expression on my face by the second or third meeting. What are we doing? So it was a lot of talk early. It was just hundreds of ideas. We all just kind of vetted a little bit. So I think by July,
Yeah.
June or July, we came to Jeff's office and hey, why don't we, as Jeff mentioned before, let's get either a business commitment for a litter-free area, clean up around your dumpster,
Yeah.
take care of your grass, take care of the outside of your property. Just a commitment. We'll give you a sticker decal. Put it on your window. We do that at Rumpke.
Yeah.
If you want to step up and do a little bit more, we've added a very simple Sign Up Genius website. We do Adopt a Block. We've split out 65 road segments in the business corridors
Yep.
to get that business maybe that we went and talked to about cleaning up their property. Can you do Plan B with us and just pick up this quarter-mile corridor right in front of your property? Just clean up the litter daily or weekly on the sidewalk out by the road.
Yep.
And then third, if you want to do a third step, can you contribute to our tree initiative? So Jeff and the township have acquired $60,000 in grant funds.
Just about.
So I kind of look at what we're doing as kind of a compliment. We're marketing to try and raise more money. That's
Yep.
kind of how I see it. So
Yep.
we're trying to raise $10,000 to go with what the township has got. And those will be planted in a residential neighborhood. So
That's right.
took us a few months to get going, but I'm happy where we're at, very proud. There's
Yep.
definitely more things we can do.
Yeah.
And we'll keep moving with it. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Right, and
I
I
add a little
remember
bit?
I remember all of the ideas just floating and floating.
Oh.
And then for 2 meetings in a row, Dean's like, let's just do something.
That's
We
right.
need to do something tangible.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden it was an explosion of goals and
Yeah.
they just started falling in line. And
Yeah.
definitely your leadership was great.
Yeah, and I just want to add, that ideation phase is really important. So one thing Green Umbrella does is we work to create regional initiatives and impact teams that are focused on specific issues. And so that ideation phase of what do we want to do, that can sometimes feel overwhelming because
Yeah.
there's so many ideas. But what was really admirable about this team is we came together and we made sure to democratize the process for selecting some of those initiatives that Dean just mentioned. We had a survey that we sent out to all of the members that participated in Team Up to Greenup, and making sure that any sort of community leaders were then also talking to their fellows in their relative organizations or constituents to make sure to input their ideas into this survey. And that's how waste and trees sort of bubbled to the top. And during that ideation phase too, we talked with other communities. And so the Adopt a Block Sign Up Genius
That's right.
program that Dean just mentioned, we have to shout out to Reading, Ohio,
That's right.
that we were able to connect with through a county initiative called We Thrive. And We Thrive through Hamilton County did put Green Umbrella in touch, and I was like, you know what? I think Reading and Colerain have a lot in comes in.
Yeah.
and Dean and others were really excited about their Sign Up Genius idea, and it took, and
Yeah.
now you have so many
By the way,
folks.
Savannah, Pat Orman and I are best friends now.
I love
Okay.
it. That's so fun.
Pat is a unbelievable recycling advocate. We've
In
met
Reading.
numerous times. We took a tour of Rumpke's recycling facility.
That's great.
That came with the city. So yeah, he's
Yeah.
gave me a lot of ideas. Sign Up Genius is very easy, very simple.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's a really great point. So that what you're talking about is that process of creating consensus, which can be challenging for a lot of different reasons and different contexts. It was probably easier. It just required patience with the team up to Greenup. I'm going to go back to Laurie here. Creating consensus in Northbrook initially, it was a little bit more than patience. It took like a fundamental shift in how a township government relates to a neighborhood, right?
Yes.
So, Laurie, I recall that meeting, and there was yelling, there was screaming, there was reddening of faces, gnashing of teeth. It was tough. It was tough. But out of that, through facilitated conversations, we were able to get to a place where we realized that like our goals are exactly the same. Like,
Right.
like we want Northbrook to be fantastic, just like we want all of Colerain to be fantastic. And what was so great, and what we saw in all that, from the township's perspective, what we saw in all of that energy was the ability to pivot it or shift it into a really positive direction. Like, and that is kind of what happened through facilitated conversation. We were able to say like, okay, what are your goals, and can we get these goals out into a plan, a strategic reinvestment plan that the neighborhood can have ownership of, that the township can help where we can, and really set a new direction for the neighborhood.
Right.
Talk a little bit about like why on earth does Northbrook want street trees? Like what is that going to do for Northbrook?
Right. So if we go back to the 50s and 60s when Northbrook began, there was a wise person somewhere who decided let's plant the exact same type of tree on every lot along the streets, and one plopped right in the middle of the yard. And all of those trees have since died. They are just monuments of a community's past. So they're falling, there's no leaves, there's no limbs on a lot of them, and so forth. So we are now in the area of how do we remove all of these trees, but how do we also replant? And let's learn from the past and not go with a sugar maple that lives for 60, 70 years and then it dies. So we need vibrancy, we need size, because they're in the right-of-way between the sidewalk and the street, so you don't want them to be damaging the sidewalks and so forth. So our neighborhood is going through a change. So we have been a victim of a lot of just put a stamp on it community and call it the way that it is. There's a lot of long roads that encourage speeding. There's the trees that are falling over. There are, you mentioned Vinebrook, who buys up our houses like crazy and rents them, so we're losing homeowners who generally will invest in their properties. But we're trying to work with the township. So the meeting that you referred to, that was the first night. You can't cuss in church because
The
they
meeting
were.
was at a church.
Yes, the meeting was at a church. And at that meeting, one of the best things that was done was at the very end, it was, let's divide this 4,500 house community into 8 segments. Is there somebody within this segment that will stand up and represent just their little corner of the neighborhood? So I was not one of the residents that stood up. I just want to go on record. I was volunteered a little later because I volunteered my neighbor across the street. But over the course of 2 years, the township was gracious enough. We had a mentor who was more or less a mediator between us, because we were still angry and they were still wanting to help, but we needed to identify what our challenges were and how can we solve them, who can solve them, and a lot of things take money. Where do you come up with resources for these things? So we had Jeff Stack, who mediated for us, and we started hosting community meetings. And lo and behold, a couple years later, we get the opportunity to work with Urban Fast Forward. So we had a lot of data collected from some very angry, slowly turning to not so angry neighbors. And with having all of their comments, got to tweak them and massage them a little bit and figure out what are priorities and what are nice to haves. So we worked with them for about 18 months and developed our strategic plan, which, as I mentioned, it's a roadmap of how to revitalize a neighborhood. And street trees is definitely one of our big goals, because there's nothing worse than waking up in the morning and a dead tree has fallen on your car. Right. So we just need help with doing that. But back to your question about the relationship between the Greater Northbrook and the township is, so we are not experts, we are residents. None of us on a Greater Northbrook have ever tried to lead a group, especially a group of starting off angry individuals, and move it forward through the process. And our greatest benefit was that we might not be the experts, but we have experts surrounding us that we could draw from. And lessons learned is a huge thing. Writing grants is a huge thing. You have to be a grant writer to get grants. I've tried writing them. I think they laugh at me. But just resources. So if you guys need something, we have something we're working on right now. He can reach out and say, hey, are you guys interested? And we're either a yes or a no, usually a yes. Or we can say, hey, Jeff, we need help with slowing people down on our streets. So it's just a mutual relationship built on respect, because we have created that respect over the years of saying, hey, if I'm mad and I pick up the phone and call Jeff, he's not going to hold it against me. He's like, hey, Laurie's mad. Let's see what we can do to address this. So it's definitely one of those things where, you build that relationship and there's like a trust.
That's it, yes.
That they're going to help us get where we need to get to, not by telling us this is the steps that you need to take to get there. If we needed that, you would do that. But hey, here's your goal. You could take this path, or this path to solve it, and we're here for you to help.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Laurie. And of the three things that the Chamber's Team Up to Greenup initiative are trying to do, we've got the businesses keeping their businesses clean and litter free. You've got the adopt a block, and then you have the street tree piece. On the street tree piece, you're exactly right. So right now, for example, we're laying out street trees for Niagara, and we may be able to get up to 80 street trees on Niagara, which is really exciting. And we reached out to Greater Northbrook and said, hey, we don't have the resources to put door hangers and knock on everybody's door, because we wanted to offer it as like an opt-out situation. So you might get a tree in front. If you don't want a tree in front of your house, tell us, opt out of the program. If you don't take any action, then you're getting a tree. But we don't have the resources to deploy people out into the community. You guys do, and do that with great gusto. And so it's just so nice to have that partnership in the community to get the message out and to affect change. It's interesting also, to tie this back to another plan. Colerain Township just recently adopted our comprehensive plan, and one element of our comprehensive plan was energy, and a piece of that element of the comprehensive plan really dealt with heat island effect in our different neighborhoods, right? And that was funded in part through a grant from the Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana Regional Council of Governments. I just gestured over here because Andy Meyer is sort of in the audience right now, a planner himself. They funded this initiative, and it identified the heat island effect in particular being particularly bad in Northbrook. Again, when you start to have these overlapping things as you're doing your planning, you start to realize that's the crosshairs. Those are actually the crosshairs of what needs to get done. And so you can start to identify initiatives to move forward with. The other thing that I really liked about what you guys were talking about was this sort of inertia at first and trying to figure out what we want to do, but then just saying we got to do something, right? And we've been on a panel before where we talked about this. Like, you have to put one foot in front of the other. It doesn't have to be a home run, the first pitch, but like, let's just get on base. Let's just put one foot in front of the other and try to accomplish something. So those three things are the first steps. Dean, do you want to talk a little bit about what do you think could be in the future for Team Up to Greenup?
So back to Rumpke's continued commitment for the area. Our last meeting I brought up, we've had a small volunteer group of people that are probably going to do the October 9th,
Yes.
and refresh my memory on the name of the,
Yes. It's
People working cooperatively.
Yeah.
Yep.
Give back Colerain.
Give back Colerain,
Yep,
yeah.
That's right. Yep.
So we've had a group at Rumpke who I've had a couple meetings with now. Our big, I think we're 1,500 employees in Colerain. How can I use this volunteer group that we've established a couple of years ago that I wasn't even a part of yet, and use the Team Up to Greenup idea to try and capitalize on our staff of people. So as far as Rumpke management ownership, they were even okay with, instead of a Saturday, can those people do a Friday?
Right.
I
That's
kind of
cool.
was
Yeah.
inspired a little bit by having the idea from Keep Cincinnati Beautiful breakfast that I went to probably
Right.
about a month and a half ago, and you had your big major companies in town, Kroger, Cincinnati Bell, and I think it was Gorilla Glue. They were up there on stage talking about that same thing to try and get your staff and your company, corporate responsibility to do something during work hours.
Yep.
Instead of doing work, to do that. So
pretty
that's
cool.
on my radar. That's something I thought, what are we going to do? The Colerain Community Association does the first and second Saturday every month. They clean up the Colerain, Ronald Reagan Ramp Highway, and then the Colerain 275. I thought, well, why don't we pick many of the other corridor
Right.
segments for Adopt-A Block, and let's do first Friday and second Saturday.
That's awesome.
Second Friday. That was kind of
Yeah.
it's an idea.
Very
So
cool.
I think at Rumpke, I'm just taking the lead to try and grow more volunteers. We're not going to,
Yes.
so
business
force those
engagement.
people,
and-
just business engagement, get more volunteers, more organized volunteers,
Yeah.
to have something maybe every month, or,
That's very cool.
that's just an idea I had. There's so many different ideas that went around our
Yeah.
first few months of our meeting. How do we put recycling into this, and,
Yes. Waste reduction and
and even the energy side. I'm not the energy expert. I'm sure Savannah is more than I, but the energy side, energy savings.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Duke has been a partner in this
Yes.
also. Yeah, that's right. Duke Energy locally. Savannah, on that topic of energy, what are you seeing outside of the three things that we started with? What are you seeing other communities in Cincinnati and around the region really engaging in and being successful in as it relates to clean and green initiatives?
Absolutely. I think if I recall properly from our survey, energy
Yeah.
was sort of the next topic of interest,
Yeah.
as well as stormwater.
Right.
And so, I think that what I've seen in other communities, for example, I used to work at the city of Cincinnati, and I know these initiatives I'm about to mention are continuing, but energy efficiency is of tremendous interest, particularly for communities that and buildings that have historically been underserved by efficiency services. So
Yeah.
thinking, rental buildings, low income needs, and so on and so forth. But the city has been able to develop a suite of programs that assists both the residents and the tenants of those buildings to improve and dramatically increase their energy savings, as well as work with the actual building owners, because those two different groups have very different incentives for
Yes.
engaging with improving a multifamily residential
Right.
building. And so that's been a very hot topic that I've seen not only across our region, but across the country as well.
Yeah.
I think it's a tricky thing that a lot of communities need to grapple with, but fortunately, we have regional communities that have taken strides and that Colerain can learn with in the future should energy
Absolutely.
be a pursuit. I'll also mention that stormwater management is a high priority for, I think, all regions
Yes.
in the community or in the region because of the climate impacts that our communities face. So I think going back to street trees, that's a first and really important step that can help with stormwater management, as in addition to the urban heat island effect, in addition to improving air quality. It's a really great tool to have in your toolbox, but there are other things needed as well. So that can be a wide range of different types of implementation projects where you can build bioswales, and that can happen on public and private property. So I could see a collaborative opportunity rising up there for Team Up to Greenup. There's also a lot of different types of planning, zoning, stormwater ordinance activity that can happen at the government level to support it systematically across the area. Because what we can expect in Colerain are hotter
Yep.
days that are longer and more heat waves, much like we experienced this summer. And we can experience increasing intensity and frequency of extreme precipitation events. And so becoming prepared for that as a community and engaging a cross-sector group to work on that is really what's needed, because it's a patchwork of like who manages property. And like I mentioned earlier, some stormwater, not some stormwater, all stormwater, it doesn't know political boundaries.
Right.
And so being able to work with groups that are working regionally, such as Green Umbrella, another group, Groundwork Ohio River Valley. These are groups that are working with jurisdictions collectively to say, hey, this is an issue that we're all in on together.
Yeah.
Because some of the water you receive might come from another jurisdiction, and
That's right.
need to be able to manage it together.
Yeah, that's great. No, that's talk about resiliency and the need to become more resilient to these sort of more intense weather events.
Mm-hmm.
We see that a lot at the township. We get a lot of phone calls about flooded basements and creeks that are flashy and they rise and get in people's backyards, and hopefully not their basements, but sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really good point. Wrapping up here, are there final thoughts? Team Up to Greenup is the beginning. Do you have any final words of advice for communities that are saying, hey, wait a minute, like, of course we want to be cleaner, of course we want to be greener, we want to be more prosperous. Like, these aren't like, we didn't come up with these as good things, right? Everybody kind of wants this, but we made it a focus through our planning efforts and now through our implementation of our plans. If there was one piece of advice that you would give to a community that's looking to start something like Team Up to Greenup, what would it be? And we'll start with Laurie.
Just do it.
Just
Don't
do
be
it.
scared to take that first step. Don't think that you can't reach out to someone else who has gone through the process, because lessons learned are your shorter pathway of getting to where you want to go. And for me, what we learned in our strategic plan and working with Urban Fast Forward is don't be afraid to be different or unique. Find a challenge and try to solve it. One of ours is Pollinator Gardens. We want to be a Tree City USA,
Right.
which isn't so unique, but it will be for Colerain. But Pollinator Gardens,
Yeah.
a 1x1 square of a couple butterfly bushes,
Yeah.
whatever, do it. So be unique and just take the bull by the horn and do it.
Thanks. Dean?
I would say what we've built with this group, the collaboration between government,
Yeah.
the neighborhood community groups, again, all volunteers, care about the community. Rumpke being the corporate, responsibility that we think we have. Green Umbrella, Hamilton County.
Yeah.
The collaboration with multi-people that have all the experience and all the expert, opinions that they've done it before or done it somewhere else, or I'd say number one, that's it. Without all those people involved, I don't think we'd be where we are already at all. So that's number one for me. I mean, I can't speak enough about the township and Jeff's commitment to this. We're kind of, again, we're all volunteers trying to have a better quality of life in the neighborhood and the community, and the township is all in on it. So, and the chamber is just great what they've done so far.
Yes.
And so
Absolutely.
I'd say the collaboration is most important.
Thanks, Dean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Savannah, what would the number one thing be from you?
I will echo some of the sentiments and maybe elaborate on some points, but it is truly an all hands on deck effort. I think one thing that's been very inspiring just about this conversation right here is learning even more of the history of the trust building,
Yes.
for example, between the township and Northbrook. That type of work and staying in relationship is key to this work. I think that if you want to have the collaboration to kind of engage a cross-sector community, you have to stay in relationship with folks. And to harken back to something Laurie was mentioning earlier, a lot of different types of experts. I would challenge Laurie and say you are also an expert because lived experience in Northbrook, that's expertise, and you know what Northbrook needs, and you can bring that to the table for the township and other groups that want to work with you. And so really focusing on community engagement and centering equity. I mean, I think that's been a really key part of some conversations is that, community resilience, we're only as strong as, some of the most vulnerable communities that we live with. And so making sure that we center equity and can elevate and attend to the needs of folks and parts of a community that have been underserved for the longest and for the most is really important. So, I think you guys you were ready to go. It took a little bit of catalyzing earlier this year, but the work is really staying and building relationship with each other.
That's a great point. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I'll try to put a bow on this for our planning folks, friends out there in the audience at this Ohio chapter of the American Planning Association State Conference. I would say that it was the work of planning that got us to that state of readiness, right? So it's one of those things, and I think one of the most beautiful things about the Team Up to Greenup, it's great. The trees are fantastic. Adopting a block is great. Less litter is superb. But really, what this helps me to understand more is that without coalition building, without creating alignment within our business community and our neighborhoods, our plans are worthless, frankly. I mean, we can only do so much by ourselves. We can tinker around the edges of these big problems that we face, but if we really want to confront these issues and we really want to make a difference, those plans need to be actualized not just by our communities, our governments, but by these multi-stakeholder groups that will attack and really make a difference. And I hope that that is the takeaway of this session. I hope that our friends out in the audience enjoyed this. I hope that it was helpful. I hope that you all are able to actualize your plans and implement your great ideas. I'd love to hear about it. I serve on the American Planning Association Ohio chapter's board, and so I'm always interested in hearing great planner stories. Please send them to me if you have them. My email is gmilz@colerain.org, and I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for being a part of this session, and thanks to the APA for allowing us to share Team Up to Greenup from Colerain Township. Thanks for joining us today. We hope that you've learned something about our community's initiative to make Colerain cleaner and greener. But let's not stop there. Please join us. If you're a member of the business community, join us by going to this website. And on that website, you can sign up to adopt a block in front of your business. You can sign up to be a part of the Team Up to Greenup initiative and commit to keeping your business litter-free. And you get a cool little decal to put on your window. Or if you'd like to help us with our street tree initiative, we have a goal of raising $10,000 for street trees in our community. And you can make those donations at that website. Thanks again for watching, and thanks for being a part of the solution.